Howdy folks, this is Justro at Metcalf Mills bringing you Story Time Tuesday. I hope you is all having a great Tuesday, and I hope you enjoy this little video. Folks, today we're getting a pretty good thunderstorm. It ain't raining too hard. It's just a fine, steady rain. There's a big storm though back over towards Big Ivy over in there. Big storm, but maybe it won't be too loud while we're doing Story Time Tuesday. So today I'm going to tell you about kind of my life working. I told you on a video a while back, maybe last Tuesday or one before or something, that first real job I ever had, and it wasn't really a real job. It was just usually on Saturdays working at the sawmill. And when I got on up 18 years old, some friends of mine, their son worked for a construction company in Asheville, and I got to know them pretty good. And he said, "Would you like to come to work for this company I work for?" I said, "Why, yeah, maybe." And that's what I wound up doing, and it was a full-time job. And when I started out, I mean, I had a little building experience and I had a desire to learn, but I didn't really have a lot of modern carpentry experience. And I started working with a framing crew, and we'd frame houses up, and from the foundation up to get the roof ready for shingles. And I learned a lot, and I worked with some good people, and I enjoyed it. And learned a lot of things about building that I didn't know and didn't have no way to learn before that. And I'm thankful for all that experience I got. Probably after working with them a couple years, I started, the men that they had working doing their grading and site prep and all that kind of thing, they left, or they let them go, and they didn't have anybody to do their grading work. So me and a couple others, we kind of started doing that. And they had some equipment, a couple tracos, a big traco and a little traco, and some the skid steer. And I started fooling with that equipment and running it, and learned about that, and done a lot of prepping slabs for like a basement or an outside patio. You know, getting that grade right and bringing gravel in and getting that grade right, and then putting plastic down, and then maybe steel if it needed it, and then pouring that concrete. And usually they, on big stuff like a basement, they'd hire a finisher to pour it and finish the floor. But if it's a patio outside or a sidewalk, most of the time we would do that and take one of them brooms and put a broom finish on it. And I done a lot of driveway aprons. Like in the city, you got to have an apron that comes in off the street, and it radiuses up into the driveway, and it has to be so high above the street, and the radiuses have to be right. You got to form a curb around through there. I poured a lot of them, and I also got experienced enough to dig footers with a little traco. You know, you lay your house out, or a surveyor pins the corners, and then you dig the footers where the foundation is going to sit on top of them. I learned how to do that, and you got to do your figuring and dig so deep so you're down below the frost line, And you have to sometimes, if it's sloping ground, you have to put steps in the footer and make bulkheads, what they call a bulkhead. And you set your grade pegs. We was pouring usually 8-inch thick footers, so you'd have to set grade pins, and you have to dig as accurately as you can on grade, because if you don't, when you put your grade pins in, they need to be around 8 inches, if that's the thickness, or 12 or 10, whatever, all over that whole footer. It needs to be about that thickness to be the most efficient with the concrete, because concrete was expensive then and it's expensive now. A lot of times we'd be digging along and we'd hit soft ground and we'd just have to go straight down. Just have to go down until we hit solid ground. And to check for solid ground, you just took a rod and pushed, or a prod rod, and just pushed down in the footer. And you know, if that rod wouldn't go down, that's solid virgin earth. But if that rod went down, you had to dig it out until you got down to solid ground. And there's a lot of crazy things we had to do. One place we had to dig 10 or 12 feet deep and put it was real wet ground, and we put like some, that fabric, I can't think of the proper name for it, Mirify or something like that, fabric down in the footer, and then we had to fill it up with gravel, fold the fabric back, and pour the footer on top of that to make it solid. It was so deep. And I done a lot of footers, and I worked from about 02 to 06 doing that. And I was working at this spot, and the neighbors, they kind of got to know me a little bit, and they said they was getting ready to build a house down the street, and they wanted to know if I could help them with their grading and stuff. And I said I didn't know, I probably could. And I was talking to another friend of mine that done some grading work about it, and he said, when you get ready to do it, let me know. So I did, and he brought his backhoe over there and pulled up and unloaded it and says, call me when you get finished. And I used his backhoe, and I graded out this house site, and I dug the footers and poured them, and that was my first job. And about that time I quit working for the company. I hated to leave, because the people that run it and the people I worked with, I was very blessed to work for people like that. And in the work environment we had, when I went on the framing crew, my supervisor, he was just the lead carpenter. He was just, I mean, I was really blessed to get to go right into the workforce and work for somebody that was that good, you know, and just good people. And I hated to leave. I really hated to leave. But in the meantime, when I started working with equipment, you know, we'd go into a lot, and most of the time it would need cleaning up. It just maybe brush or grass or maybe even big trees. So we would clear the lot out where it needed to be for the house, and I always had plenty of good firewood to haul home, and you know, the stumps we'd dig up and haul off. And the company had a big old Vermeer 1800 BC chipper, and that thing would chip just big trees. And we chipped a lot of things up like that, and brush and stuff we'd chip and have a chip pile there to either leave or haul off. And then we'd lay it out after that, like I was talking about, and dig the footers and pour them, and it'd be ready then for the block masons to come in to lay the block up to start building the house. Well, then they get the house about done. Well, it's time to put the dressing on it. So we'd do the finish grading around the house, backfill the foundation. If there was any kind of drain system that was not subbed out to a contractor, we would do that. And and backfill the foundation, do all the finished grade work around it, and smooth everything up, fix the driveway, gravel the driveway. They had a few driveways that was concrete or asphalt. Just depends, you know, who it was and what it was and where it was at and all that. But we'd slick down the yard and rake the yard real nice and clean. And a lot of times right there in town, we'd go get a load of sod. And we'd have our yard fixed nice and slick. And I'd go out to Turf Mountain Sod out there at Hendersonville and get, me or somebody else would go and get a load of sod. And if you've never seen it, it comes on a pallet and it looks like rolls of carpet. And I think it's about 24 inches wide and a piece about maybe, when you roll it out, 3 or 4 foot long. But you got all these rolls packed on this pallet and they wrapped them with plastic. And we'd go get that sod, and in the morning, you know, or when we got done, the yard would be just dirt, just a dirt yard, and you go get that sod and bring it back, and we'd roll that sod out and put it together real nice and get it settled in there, and then you may start the day out with a dirt yard, and when you finish the day, it's a green yard, it's grass. And that was always amazing to me. And done a lot of stuff like putting mailboxes up and the landscaping. They got into doing our own landscaping, and we would get shrubbery, and they always wanted to use indigenous stuff that was native, and it just fit here in the mountains. That's what you want to use. You don't want a bunch of exotic stuff in the mountains. I mean, it don't fit. I know a lot of people does that, and that's fine if you want that. There's some stuff around here that my mother set out that's it just don't belong here, but that's all right. It's here and it's growing and it's happy, so it's not invasive. So, but anyway, we'd landscape and used a lot of rhododendrons and azaleas and hollies and juniper and just stuff like that, like ground cover. And we done stuff like we'd go get pallets of rock and line the driveways and the sidewalks and walkways with rock on the edges, and then we'd usually have a border around that with shrubbery, and then we would mulch everything. If there was a big bank on the side yard or something, we'd always mulch that heavy, and done a real good job. And when we got done, it looked real good, real good. So I got all that experience of landscaping, and I got to talking to some of the owners about, well, you know, we got a lot of rocks out here at my house, and Daddy would let me load up some rocks and I'd usually bring a company truck and trailer home and kind of load up by hand what I could as far as rocks. And I did get some bigger rocks that I had to use a machine for, and take them rocks, and we'd use them pretty mountain rocks in the landscapes, and it was so much fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and like I said, I was very fortunate and blessed to leave home to go to a public job and get to work with the people that I got to work with. I'm so thankful, and I always will be. It just, I didn't realize then, you know, how fortunate I was, but now I do, and I'm really thankful. After that, like I said, when I got this job of doing this grading job, well, let me back up. Something else I learned a lot about was moving equipment and, you know, hauling stuff on a trailer and all that kind of thing. I pulled a trailer all over Asheville, and some streets would be so packed with vehicles on one side or two sides, barely enough room for the truck and trailer, and a lot of times we'd have to back in, you know, maybe a half a mile or something between cars, and you had to be right and really pay attention to what you was doing, and go in and get a piece of equipment, load it up and move it out, and how to bind it down and safely move all that. And it was a lot of good experience I got there. And I took that job on my own, and I told the people at the company I was working for, you know, I'm gonna try to do this and go out on my own. And they said, okay, you know, we understand, go ahead. And I did. And like I said, that buddy of mine, he said, let me know when you start. And he brought his backhoe and unloaded it. Said, holler when you get done with it. And I done that job. Like I said, dug this man's basement out, dug their footers, poured them, ready for their house to start getting built. And that was my first job, and I done real good. I made a good chunk of money because I didn't have no expense for equipment, and I didn't have anybody working with me. I worked by myself. And then I, you know, went on from there and got another job and another job. And there's this block mason that I worked for, and I didn't work for him. He would get me jobs like prepping slabs, where he would lay the block up. You know, he'd get me the job to prep the slab, and I'd usually rent a skid steer. Somebody'd bring the gravel, and I'd go in and prep the slab. I have done, you know, 2 or 3 a day if I had them to do. And then digging footers, I'd go dig footers by myself, get off of the machine and go shoot grade as I dug. Which, you know, I was young and I didn't care. I just done it all. But done that, and just one thing led to another. And there's a company called Jim Walter Homes. Word of mouth, people would recommend me, and I'd go do jobs. And you know, I was young. I can see some things. I look back now on some of the things I done, and I would do it differently now, just like exactly how I brought somebody's driveway into their house or something. But you know, I was young. I was learning every day, but I always tried to do my best and do a good job. And at Jim Walter's Homes, they was a big home building place, and they would recommend me to their customers, or I would do work directly for them, and I done a lot of jobs for them. I did hire out and have a few people help now and then, but I done a lot by myself. And then it come up on the needed to learn how to do a wastewater system, a septic system. So that same friend told me about that. Old crow flying around down there trying to snoop in and get some of our goodies. But a friend told me about how to do a wastewater system, a septic system. When I started out, you didn't have to have anything. You know, you just do it, and the county inspector would come and check it out, and you was good to go if you passed. And I don't think I ever had a septic system not pass inspection. I might have had to fix something, but I don't think I ever got failed on a system, best I remember. I always tried to do my best. And same way with digging footers. I dug a lot of footers, put a lot of steel in, and digging footers. I remember one time I done a job down towards Cherokee down there. I can't remember that creek. Clear Creek or something like that. Anyway, it's a big old house, and I dug the footers. It's down in a foundation where they'd graded it out, and I always took a flat shovel and I cleaned my footers as clean as a pin. I put the steel in them. Inspector would come and check it out. And I remember this inspector, he come and he stood there and looked a minute, and he said, I want to know something. I said, what's that? He said, I want to know where the vacuum cleaner is that you use to clean these footers out with. That made me feel good. I just used a flat shovel, but it was slick and clean, and I mean, it looked that clean. It looked really good. He liked my work, and I was experienced by then. He said, if I can ever help you, let me know. I thought, okay, you know, thank you, I appreciate it. Well, I was doing a job a year or two later on another side of that county, and it had got up in the evening, and the inspector come by. I don't remember what the detail was, but he was going to fail my footer. And this was over a 2-hour drive from home. He was going to fail my footers. And I said, well, call Joe. I said, you know Joe? He said, yeah, I know Joe. I said, call Joe. And he called Joe, and Joe, you know, told him something about me, I guess, and what he knew about me. And anyway, the man said, all right, I gotta leave. The man had something he had to go do, the inspector. He said, I'm gonna leave, but you fix this and you're good to go. So he didn't fail me and make me have to drive all that way the next day back to this job to see him again. But done a whole lot of footers, and I put in a lot of water lines, dug a lot of lines for, you know, power lines to come in, underground electrical. Learned how all that works, learned who I need to talk to, learned how to talk to people like inspectors and things like that. When it comes to inspector, the main thing is to be nice and don't act like a hardhead or something, and just kind of go along and be as accommodating as you can to them. That's kind of always my thought and kind of my personal policy, and I always had good luck with dealing with inspectors on jobs and things like that. But them, you know, digging, a lot of times you'd have to work with subcontractors, like you'd have to work with the electrical company or something in coordination with digging these lines so they could put it in and you could cover it up. And putting in a service line usually had to be 3 feet deep, and they'd usually take a shovel and go through and put about that much dirt on it, and then they'd run their red tape. So if anybody ever digs down in there, they'll see that red tape, and it's a warning, you know, there's an electrical line running through here. And you had to kind of coordinate and work with them on a lot of these things. And I met a lot of good people. I wish I could remember them all. And, you know, I worked with plumbers. They had a good plumber, had good electricians, and that was back, and I started with that company in '02. And it was just, times was so good, you know, everybody was working hard and things was happening and getting things done. And compared to now, things then was a lot cleaner and just nicer, and it was way different then. But anyway, I really enjoyed that experience, and I'm thankful for it. And get off when I quit them, to back up a little bit, I rented equipment. So I'd rent a piece of equipment to do a job and take it back when I got done. And I finally bought me a little 1-ton dump truck, and that helped me tremendously because I could pull a trailer and move equipment and also haul stuff and dump what I needed to. But starting out, I rented all my equipment. There's a place in Hendersonville that I rented from, and they had a decent sized track hoe and excavator, and I'd rent that thing by the month. I kept it rented for months and months and months, and done a lot of work with it and made a lot of money with it. And later on, I was able to I bought a bigger track hoe. It was a Komatsu, about 18,000 pound machine, not a huge one, but a big one, medium sized. And that really put me in, I didn't have the expense of renting equipment, so that really helped me out as far as what I could make, you know, because I wasn't having to pay this big rental bill every month just to maintain my own equipment. And it was a good machine, and I didn't have to do a whole lot to it the whole time I had it, and I took good care of it. And later on, this fella had this little small track hoe, a mini excavator, and he was gonna sell it for the payoff. He'd gotten some kind of a bind and couldn't keep the machine, so he sold it to me for what the payoff on it was. And I got that little thing, and that really helped me because I could move it around easy and, go do things and load up and leave, and that really helped a lot having that little machine. I never did buy a skid steer. I just rent them when I needed them to do something specific, but that was a handy machine. And I done that kind of work for, well, just the last 2 or 3 years I've kind of stopped doing any of that, but I kept that big machine till about 14, and it's sitting around. I wasn't doing no big jobs much, and this fella wanted to buy it, and I just sold it to him and kept my little machine. I'd still do jobs with the small one. If I needed something bigger, I'd rent it or work with somebody else on it, but I've still got the little machine. You've seen me use it down at Permapasture and on a couple of my videos, I think, but that's kind of how I come to be. And then 2012, 2013, when I built that water mill, that kind of got me back to the grain mill. I started with that grain mill when I was 14 or 15, and I always loved that, and this got me back to grain mills. And I also bought a sawmill in 03, and it was a Peterson swing saw. I bought it down in Bamberg, South Carolina. This old boy had it and never did use it much, and I bought it, kept it till 2010. I kept it about 7 years and sold the doggone thing for more than I paid for it. Amish man up in Ohio bought it from me, and he called a couple of times. He said, well, I want to buy that. Will you bring it to me? And I said, I'm going to have to know for sure you're going to take it before I bring it up there, because this is about a 12-hour drive or something. Oh, yeah, I'll take it. So I took it on his word and got up there, and we set it up. It was cold. Gosh almighty, it was blowing, looked like blue snow. It was freezing cold outside. And me and him and his boys set this sawmill up and started it up, and I showed him about it and everything. And went in his house there, and he had a big family, probably 10 or 12 kids, and me and Virginia was just a little girl, and we went in there and sat down, and then, I don't know how often they see people, but there's all just standing there looking at us, and they brought us some ice cream, and we eat a bowl of ice cream, and I I had to wait till the next morning to go to the bank with him till he could pay me. So me and Virginia stayed all night there in that town. And next day after he paid me, I drove across Ohio, on the other side of Ohio, and to look at this wood miser sawmill that I've got now. And the snow was about shin deep on the ground, and we went out there, and this old fella uncovered that sawmill and showed me all about it and run it some. And we went in the house and talked about it. And well, he didn't want to cover it back up. I said, yeah, let's cover it back up, because I wasn't for sure I was going to buy it right at that minute. So we covered it back up and went in the house and talked a while and agreed on a price. And I hooked to it and come on back home. But it was I think I drove about all night. Didn't get home about 5 o'clock that next morning pulling that sawmill. But we got back and it was good. And still got it, still saws. I want to show y'all that sometime, share it with you. So I used that sawmill. I done a little bit of sawing for other people, not a whole lot, mostly just for myself. And that sawmill allowed me to build that water mill, and I was able to cut every piece exactly how I wanted it. Didn't have to try to get somebody else to do it how I wanted it. As far as milling wood, I was able to do it myself and milled all the wood for that water mill. And done that, and I built a few things around here with lumber that I milled. But that water mill kind of got me back to thinking about how much I love grain mills and all that. I made a little moving towards doing more stuff with grain mills after that, and then it just got to be more and more. And in 2016, it had been a lot of stuff hunting grain mills and looking at grain mills since then, or before then. But 2016, I got my first mill to restore. It was a 24-inch mattress, needed a total restoration for a mill down in South Carolina, the historic Haygood Mill in Pickens, South Carolina, and I redone it for them, and then just went on from there. I've done several since then, and that's kind of how as far as my working life, from when I started to now, that's how that all went. And also, in 09, no, it was 08, in the fall of 08, I decided to lease a little grocery store close by here, over in next county, right here, just not far from the house. And I leased this little community grocery store, and I had gas and diesel and kerosene, dog food, a bunch of grocery stuff, sold all kinds of stuff, and done real good with it. I started out, and with a set amount, and I tripled my investment. I think I was there for like 3 or 4 months. And I really enjoyed it. It worked out real good for me because the people I'd leased it from. Some things happened during that time, and that's when after being married for 7 years, I had to go through a divorce and had to close the store and all that stuff. And that was the first part of 2010. No, 2009, because I got the store started in fall of 2008. In 2009 is when I closed the store, sold it out to them, and done real good. I enjoyed it. I'd go in at usually 6 in the morning and open up and work, part of the morning, and somebody else would come in and run it, and then that evening I'd come back off of the job and close the store run it till closing time. But it was an experience. You see a lot of different people and hear a lot of different stories, and it was an experience for sure, and I enjoyed it, and I'm thankful I got the experience. But done that, run a store for a while. It just, the store requires a lot, and you got to be there, have somebody you can trust to be there. But I enjoyed it. It was just required all your time, and you know, I didn't really want to do that. It was an experience, and it done good, and I was happy with it, and I was able to get out of it better than I got in it, so it worked out real good. And I kept doing grading work after that, and got the job building the mill after that, and that big water mill I built. And that's my experiences working. There's a lot of others that I ain't thinking about as far as things I've done, but you know, I've buried cows and run track hose on the side of a mountain straight off, and just look back on that now and it's just dumb, really, because if that thing had ever started rolling, I'd have probably been, no telling what had happened to me. I'd have most likely been dead, but I didn't. I was blessed and never did have any big accidents like that, so it worked out good. But that's kind of my life, working on the workforce when I left home and went to work, and that's how it went and what I done and all that. So I enjoyed every bit of it. The time I started out working at the sawmill, and when I started working for that company in Asheville, and all the way to now, I love it. So it's nice to do something you enjoy doing. And somebody said if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. And I love my job, but I have also worked a few days in my life. But that sums up, I guess, my life on the workforce. But I hope you enjoyed hearing about this. I couldn't really settle on what I wanted to talk about today, and I thought, well, that'd be something good to share with you all, you know, more about me and kind of more about my life since I got to be grown, and what I've done and how I got to be this way. I hope everybody's doing good out there. Happy Tuesday. Don't get discouraged. We got to keep on keeping on. And it depends on us. And I hope my thought of the day sat good with everybody yesterday. I done it early yesterday morning, and I didn't get around to putting it up until later yesterday, but I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was an encouragement to you. It was to me. Just stay encouraged. You know, everything's gonna work out. I know that. I've got faith, and we're blessed, and we're gonna keep on keeping on. And I know that's easier for some folks to say than it is others, but regardless, that's what we need to do. This is Just at Metcalf Mills. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you ain't already. Tell your friends about me. Hit that notifications bell so you won't miss none of these videos, and get them while they're fresh, because you know everything's better when it's fresh. I look forward to seeing you next time.